winning in the evolving marketing landscape. Let me remind you, we have a dedicated Q&A segment in this session, hence requesting all our viewers to kindly post your questions in the Ask a Question tab. On that note, we are honored to have with us our keynote speaker this morning, Mr. Rishad Tobaccowala. He has been engaged with MMA at a global level and has been speaking at several marquee events at MMA, and we are so glad to have him on board for the India series as well. Rishad most recently was the global strategist and chief growth officer of the 80,000 person marketing and business transformation Publicis Group and has been named by Business Week as one of the top business leaders for his pioneering innovation, and Time magazine dubbed him one of the 5 marketing innovators. Recently, he published Restoring the Soul of Business, Staying Human in the Age of Data, published by HarperCollins. Without any further ado, please join me in welcoming Mr. Rishad Tobaccowala, advisor, speaker, educator.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the introduction. Thank you for everybody who is attending. I am going to be speaking about winning in the evolving marketing landscape. My presentation is going to be about 20 minutes long, and then I'm going to leave 10 minutes for Q&A. So hopefully there will be Q&A, and we will be able to answer some questions. I'm going to do this presentation without any slides. So it's going to be a conversation in 3 sections. I'm going to first speak about the 4 big trends that are impacting broadly all of society and marketing. I will then move to the 5 key shifts that are happening in the marketing landscape, and then move to 3 things that each one of you all can do regardless of the company, the area, your level, that you can implement to thrive in such a landscape and win in such a landscape. Everything I will be speaking about, you can read more about at my free thought letter, which is at rishad.substack, which is substack.com. So rishad.substack.com. And you will find a piece there called The Era of Reinvented Marketing, the dawn of a new era, the era of reinvented marketing, which will have some of the stuff that I have talked about, but you will also find lots of other things. And it's completely free and available. So with that, let me begin by noting the 4 forces that are today changing everywhere in the world. The 4 forces, and which are also impacting marketing, are number 1, globalization, number 2, demographic shifts, number 3, technology shifts, and number 4, the ongoing and massive impact on society forever of COVID-19. So these are the 4 big shifts that are underlying the tectonic plates that impact every marketer, every firm, every customer, consumer, producer. Number 1 is globalization. Globalization continues to be unstoppable. All that has happened is we've moved from a Western-centric globalization, which was dominated primarily by the United States and Western Europe, into a multipolar globalization that will be dominated by 5 or 6 different centers of gravity, which will continue to include the United States and Western Europe, but will also obviously have areas such as China and India. We see this despite of what people might say about globalization being in decline in 3 ways. The first is still most of the world's products and services are traded globally and will continue to be traded globally. Today, because of the Ukraine war, we're now going to have a major global food shortage that basically gives you an idea of how, regardless of where or what one can do, everything is impacted globally. Number 1. Number 2, the opportunities and threats that all of us have are actually going to be global, whether it is climate change, whether it is COVID-19, whether it is the contours of the internet in the future. These are all global. So that's the second force. And the third one really is 7 billion of the 7.6 billion people in the world live outside Western Europe and North America. And therefore, when Western Europe and North America say globalization is coming to an end, it's only Western and US dominated globalization, not multipolar globalization. You all in this market of India, which is so significant, in fact, this is the second largest MMA market after the United States. And it's a country that I basically grew up in, and which probably has more engineers for Accenture, IBM, and one day for Google and other companies. What we're basically seeing is truly the impact of globalization. The second is demographic shifts. And every country has different demographic shifts. India, you're beginning to see for the first time the demographic shift of population starting to slow down, population growth, and peak population will occur a little bit earlier. India continues to be a country that's really young. Those are two things that actually differentiate India from most countries. It's a country that is got a median age still in the 20s, and it has a population that still continues to increase. When you look at Western Europe, Eastern Europe, China, all of the East, we basically have population decline. And at the very same time, we have rapidly aging populations. So there'll be over 300 million people over 65 years old next year in China. In the United States, 10,000 people turn 65 every day. So India has this, whether we call it a demographic dividend or whatever, but it has its own challenges and its own specificity. And to give you an idea of that, of both globalization and Indian demographics, of the 175 million people or 160 million people who will soon be on Disney Plus, 50 million of those are in Disney Plus Hotstar from India. So just gives you an idea of how globalization and demographic shifts together with India's population makes a very big shift. Third is really technology. And we are now entering what I call the third connected age of technology. And this is why the landscape is evolving. The internet's been around and online's been around since a long time, but really it was 1993 where we entered the first connected age. And in the first connected age with the World Wide Web in 1993, we all basically connected to discover and we connected to transact. That gave birth to businesses like search and e-commerce, and obviously huge companies like Flipkart and Amazon and Google and others. In 2007, we entered the second connected age. The second connected age made a dramatic difference to the world. We were now connected all the time, and we were connected to everybody. We call that mobile, and we call that social. And we had always said one day the world was going to be mobile. It began to be so starting in 2007. Today, most people in the world, including in the United States, most traffic and most interactions come from a mobile device versus a laptop or a desktop device. So we entered the second connected age, which is social and mobile. These build on each other. One doesn't replace the other. So search and e-commerce in the first connected, second connected to everybody, connected all the time, social and mobile. We are now entering the third connected age. And the third connected age are going to have massive implications on everything, including every single aspect of advertising and marketing. What are the shifts that are underway already, but we don't see them clearly? The first is data connecting to data, which is machine learning. AI increasingly is going to be fueling everything from marketing, advertising, services, biotechnology, pretty much everything. And we already see that in things like recommendation engines. Almost a third of Amazon sales take place after you check out because of machine learning. So data connected to data, machine learning is one key thing that's driving the future of marketing. The second one is much faster ways of connecting. We saw in India the massive impact when Geo was rolled out on everything from society to everything else. We are now going to, in the next few years, it's already beginning to happen in the West, move faster and faster to 5G. And 5G, in addition to being extremely resilient, basically allows us to download, let's say, a high definition movie in 7 seconds or less. that amount of speed and combined with mobile phones will really not just have computers in our with us, we'll have a lot more things. Third, the mobile phone will be with us, or the mobile device, but mobility won't necessarily just be the phone. It could be a lot of other devices, including, glasses, headphones, etc. Because the third shift, in addition to data connecting to data, machine learning, and much faster forms of connecting, which is 5G, is we're going to basically have new ways of connecting. Voice has already become a significant way of connecting and interfacing with devices. That will continue as devices become smaller and more powerful, and you have to speak to them because they're too small to manipulate either with your finger, and obviously a mouse or a keyboard makes no sense. So voice will be one, but quickly is augmented reality. Look at your latest phones, you'll see a lot of augmented reality technologies already built in. And augmented reality simply will be an overlay, and you will see it scaled significantly among things like Google Maps and a lot of other things. The third arena in this area is virtual reality. Virtual reality is still young and it's early days, but it too will happen, and you're beginning to see the impact of virtual reality in a sort of a 2.0 world of it, which is gaming, which is a $160 billion global industry, bigger than the movie industry, bigger than the gambling industry. Many of these industries combined are smaller than the gaming industry. So voice, augmented reality, virtual reality. And the fourth shift really is going to basically be that of new trust currencies, of which blockchain is the key factor. So if you combine blockchain with AR, VR, and voice, and 5G, and machine learning AI, that basically will lead to the third connected age, which we're already beginning to be in. Building on the first and second connected age, it would change the way the world of marketing exists. So what are some of those shifts? Well, one way to think about what the shifts might be is to think about how marketing and media has changed as we speak about it today. So let me start, and in this particular case, in this piece, which is called The Dawn of a New Era, Reinvented Marketing, I share a chart, which is a simple chart on one chart trying to describe the future of marketing. You can see it there at rishad.substack.com, or you can write it down in the following ways. There are 5 columns, A, B, C, D, E. A stands for audience, B stands for brands, C stands for content, D stands for data, and E stands for enterprise. All of these 5 are significantly shifting and will continue to shift. Let's talk about audience. It's very clear that every marketer and media company recognizes that we no longer are actually sending messages to audiences. We actually are interacting with very active people versus passive people. We are going to see more and more active customers, active consumers, rather than passive in this new world. The second is think of not using the word consumer, but think of the word using people for audiences. When you think about consumers, you think about people through the lens of your brand. But the world doesn't see itself through lens of your brands. Let's look at an incredible company called Procter & Gamble. They have amazing brands, but almost all their brands just do one thing. They remove dirt. They remove dirt from your clothes, from your butt, from your teeth. They're a dirt removal company. If they only saw people through the lens of their brand, the only thing they would understand is my dirt removal habits. But P&G is too sophisticated. They see us as people. So we have to think about people and not just consumers. Very important. Third, we will continue in the world of marketing to move more and more into what I call reaggregated versus segmented marketing. So segmented marketing is when you take large audiences like newspaper, television, and you try to make them into smaller audiences by selecting the right newspapers, the right television shows, etc. So it's like starting, and I know I'm speaking to India, so excuse this metaphor. It's like starting with a cow and hacking it till you get a steak. On the other hand, reaggregated marketing, and search is a form of reaggregated marketing. A lot of social is a form of reaggregated marketing. is you start with a piece of mince and you get enough to a hamburger, which is you start with audiences of one and you re-aggregate them either through decision engines, bidding, uh, etc., to find as many people as you want, but one at a time, versus taking lots of people and making them to a smaller group. So re-aggregated marketing, your audiences being interactive and thinking about people versus consumers are the key things for the future of audience. B is for brands. Not surprisingly, there are three ways that brands are increasingly going to be built. And communication is going to be less and less important, but it'll be a component of these three. The first is brands are increasingly going to be experiences. If you have a great brand experience, you're likely to speak about it, tell people about it, be loyal to it, much more than if people send you a lot of advertising telling you it's really cool, because they want you to eventually tell people it's cool. So continuing to increase brands and brand experiences will become a big part of it. But the second and third are brands as purpose. Purpose is increasingly important among all people, including young people. What does a brand stand for? What does a company stand for? So brands as purpose. And finally, and this is the one that is new, brands as employees. No company and no brand will be able to thrive in the future unless its own employees and its own suppliers thrive. Because when you think about it, the most important advocates for your brand, even more important than happy customers, are happy employees. Happy employees provide customer service. They are in the stores. They're the people who innovate and come up with the ideas. You will see in any particular category, if you differentiate between companies that are doing well versus companies that are not doing well, you will likely find that net employee promoter score, not just net consumer promoter score, is a big, big deal. So as we think about the future of brands, think employees, think experiences, and think purpose. C is content. We clearly are in a very, very different world of content. First of all, content is becoming mongrelized. It is absolutely impossible to put content in a bucket. The other day, while I was here in Chicago, I was on TikTok. I saw a commercial or an ad. I bought a product off it, and I had arranged to pick it up as I walked by my local Target store. When I did that, what was that, I ask you? Was that above the line or below the line? Because I started with marketing and ended up with sales. Was it offline or online? Because I started on a phone and on a mobile device and ended up in a store. Was it mobile? Was it e-commerce, or was it social? It was all of those. And was it, analog or digital? It was all of those. And so we have to really think whether we're organized for the future or we're organized by departments and things in our companies built on the past. So content is morphing, and therefore marketing is morphing. The other is who the new content creators are changing pretty dramatically. Today in the US, more people interact with the D'Amelio sisters of TikTok, the Kardashian sisters of Instagram, and Mr. Beast of YouTube than watch the American Super Bowl. Yes, that's true. There's an absolutely new generation of content creators. And those content creators don't have to be famous and amazing like those people. When I had mentioned my Substack, which is rishad.substack.com, I write it free. I write it every Sunday. It's read by 25,000 people, including 500 CEOs of marketing companies. So in effect, I reach more CEOs of marketing companies than Ad Age or Adweek does in the United States. That's what I mean by new content providers. So content is morphing. There are going to be new content providers. And finally, we must also think about new types of content, especially in a world of machine learning and 5G. D is data. Data we always know is important. I'm a big believer in data. But please recognize that data alone is not the way brands are built. Data illuminates, it shows the way ahead. But it's like electricity. You can't operate without it. But unless your competitors are competing with candles and steam engines, they also have electricity. So it's how you extract meaning from mathematics, how you tell stories utilizing data, And how you connect data to other things in your organization is the differentiator, not data itself. The big mistake is people believing data is the differentiator. And so many people talk about their special data. Let's be serious. There's less than half a dozen companies that have really special data. Everybody else has the same data. It's how you use it, how you leverage it to tell stories. So the future is not about data-driven marketing. The future is about data-driven storytelling. The future is recognizing that human beings choose with their hearts and we use numbers to justify what we just did. If that was not true, none of us would have been born. Our parents would have found the ROI on parenthood doesn't work. None of us would drive anything more expensive than a Maruti car. None of us would wear anything but the lowest price Titan watches. 7 out of every 10 decisions you make with your heart using numbers to justify what you just did. Do not be a marketer that is data-driven only, because if that's what you are going to be out of a job in a world of machine learning and AI. If the number is the answer, the people who compute the number, which is the machines, can do a better job than you. So please recognize that marketing is about storytelling, insights, and a lot of other things besides data and algorithms. Finally, E, which is enterprise. Enterprise is basically, very simply, the reality that we all have to rethink the way our organizations are set up for the future. One is we have to recognize that we have often been set up in the containers of the past for departments, for the way media and marketing and customers worked in the future, in the past. So can you rethink about it? So I always say the future does not fit in the containers of the past. The second, in organizational design, we always want to have environments that basically allow people to speak up freely. The best companies, the best marketing companies have people challenging each other because that's the way ideas happen to basically be born. And finally, we must always basically recognize that the best companies, the best enterprises are ones that are constantly reinventing themselves. Because if you want to reinvent marketing, you have to reinvent the marketer and the marketing firm, the media firm, the advertising agency firm. So I will end with 3 ways that everyone can do this, regardless of your level, your title, and your company. In 40 years of working, I started my career when there were typewriters, and I recently have been writing and giving presentations to board of directors all over the world on the future of the internet, where I explain where the next generation of the internet, the third connected age, and how Web3 and tokens and metaverses and DAOs are all very different things that people are confusing, that they're the same thing, and how they work. People sometimes ask me, why do I care? How am I still doing this? I believe that the day you stop learning is the day you start dying. The day you stop learning is when you fake it and you slowly become irrelevant, both as an individual and as a marketer and as a business person. So my one piece of advice is to spend an hour every day learning new things. The second is to build a case for the exact opposite of what you believe. So whatever you believe, build a case for the exact opposite of what you are recommending. That will not only strengthen your argument, but will make sure that you are not in a world where you have algorithms optimized to you, where people around you, especially as your senior, tell you that you're really cool. Some of us start to believe our flatulence smells like Chanel 5. Don't do that, build the opposite case. And third is learn new technologies by doing things, not just reading, not just building an opposite case. Just like I learned Substack, every year or 2, I try to learn a new technology deeply. Learn, do, build a case for the opposite. Thank you very much, and I'll open it up for questions.
Thank you so very much, Rishad, for that wonderful session. And we're so happy to receive some questions from our audience members. So our very first question is from Mr. Noel D'Souza from Campaign India. He's a journalist at Campaign India. His question to you is, what is the key element in today's marketing landscape that brands need to focus on when it comes to digital communication?
I think the most important thing that they have to think about when it comes to digital communication is that it's communication, right? A lot of people are very worried about how they leverage the technology and whether they're using the latest technology versus what they're saying. So I truly believe that in communication, there are 2 things. There is the plumbing and there is the poetry. we should not emphasize the plumbing too much. It's already been said. It's the poetry.
That was so beautifully said. So thank you so much. I'm sure everybody is going to remember this one. And on that note, let's move on to our next question, which is from Ms. Gitanjali Bhattacharjee from EY. Her question is, taking off from your wonderful context of the soul of the business, how are marketers expected to win in the evolving landscape when most of them seem to be grappling with not enough people or staff and too many priorities and projects?
So there are three, it's very challenging. Without a doubt, nothing is easy these days. I'm working with lots of different companies all around the world. It is difficult. But I would say there would be three things. Number one is focus. You will normally find that approximately less than 20% of what you do drives 100% of your profits or more, right? Why are you doing all the other things, right? That's number one. If you focus, you may not need as many people, but you will also take work out of people's, plate so they can actually have time to do other things. Second is you recognize that the future is not about necessarily the office, but it's about in-person interaction. So encourage people that to work together in person, whether it's at a conference, whether it's at a restaurant, whether it's at an event, sometimes at the office, and not necessarily the office. What people don't recognize is once you don't think about your company central in the office, yes, communities, cultures, etc., you actually save a lot of time, and your talent that you can hire is far broader than where you can find them.
Thank you so much, sir. And next question to you is from Mr. Rohit Darbal, MD, MMA APAC. His question is, what is the key element in today's marketing landscape that brands need to focus on when it comes to digital communication?
I would say the single most important thing that they today need to focus on is to sort of recognize that we are moving into a world which is omnipresence. So I'm going to be writing about omnipresence this Sunday. And as I said, I write every Sunday. So my topic this Sunday is omnipresence. Last Sunday it was culture, but omnipresence. What do I mean by omnipresence? So if you remember, we used to have omnimedia, which is marketers were figuring out how to manage between different media types. Then we moved to omnichannel. And people are trying to figure out omnichannel. How do I make my different channels work, analog and digital, offline, online, etc. Now we're moving into something I call omnipresence. And part of omnipresence is today's world and tomorrow's world. So in effect, not only we are going to think about offline and online, above the line, below the line, we're not just going to think across media, but we're going to think about the following three things. We're going to basically think about what are we doing in physical worlds and in virtual worlds. And we're going to find more and more people are going to spend time in the virtual world, right? Today, when you think about digital world versus physical world, we spend 30 to 40% of our time in the digital world. And people would have told you, like you told somebody 20 years ago, you said that's impossible. So we will eventually see people spend 5, 10, 15, 20% of their time in the virtual world. So how does a marketer span physical and virtual worlds, which is extremely important? How does a marketer span different types of devices, right? Which basically means we're going to have many, many more devices that people are going to interact with. Third is how does a marketer span not only the current marketing landscape, but in a world where brands will be built with voice, augmented reality, and virtual reality. So if you think about the physical world and the digital world, you think about lots of different devices, and you think about augmented reality, virtual reality, and voice. A brand will need to have a presence everywhere. And so the whole idea is, how do you show up in a world where there is no video or pictures? Or how do you show up when you're in overlay? Or how do you show up when in a virtual reality where the technology still isn't as sophisticated as the real world or some other places? So marketers are going to have to think about omnipresence.
Thank you so much, sir. So that was actually a question from Noel D'Souza, Campaign India journalist. Our question from Mr. Rohit Darbar is actually, what are your top three predictions for 2022 and 2023 in the light of the new tech adoption by both marketers and consumers?
So, my three top predictions are the following. The first is that what we're going to basically see is more and more people are going to start talking, maybe more like 23 than 22, that social is going to be replaced with the word community. That it's going to basically about unleashing and enabling community and community management, right? Part of it is because that's what makes sense. And the second part of it is primarily because Web3 enabling technology puts much more power in creators' hands than necessarily in companies' hands. So we'll be thinking about community. The second thing that we're going to basically be very fixated on is something that I believe that the previous panel gave a low rating of like 2 or 3, which is broadly brand safety, privacy, etc. Very, very, very important. Okay, very important. And then the third one is that you're going to find that marketers are going to recognize that they need to invest in their talent. One of the biggest challenges we have today is marketers are not investing enough in upgrading the skill sets and upgrading the capabilities, both as individuals, people, leaders, and everything else of their people. Marketers eventually are all of you. It's not some company, it's not some brand, it's not some logo, it's human beings. And those are the three things you're going to see. So an investment in people, thinking more about community sort of management, brand safety, privacy, purpose of brands, etc.
Thank you so much, sir. So our next question is by Mr. Subodh Fadnis. His question is, how social media is changing the marketing landscape?
Well, social media has changed the landscape. It has changed all landscape. It has changed the way people get elected. It's to change the way we get our news. And if you think about it, it basically does two things. It allows people to micro-target, right? And it allows people to micro-target supposedly with their friends influencing them, which is an extremely powerful way of looking at things. Obviously, there are huge downsides, as we've seen with a lot of companies, with social. But I think what you're going to basically see is the next generation of an improved social with community. But it has, today, I would say, along with search, is the most powerful form of marketing.
Thank you so much, sir. So our next question is, how does marketing environment affect marketing decisions?
So it depends on what you might mean by marketing environment. But obviously, all marketing decisions are based on three realities. One is, what is the state of the economy and state of the world? So obviously, because that impacts what your customer, your people, the people you're selling to, what their mindsets and what they need. So it goes up and down based on that. But the big change now happening in marketing environment, I think, is less about how the economy goes up and down, but how people's minds are changing, how human beings are changing. And this was basically the big impact of COVID-19. Remember, I mentioned the fourth shift, and I didn't talk too much about the fourth shift. And what COVID-19 did is it made everybody rethink what they were doing in their lives. When millions of people were dying or getting sick, people began to realize that life was precious. In the back, even though we may not be talking about it, and we are trying to figure out who do we trust, what is important, how do we spend our time. That's part of the reason why you're having the great resignation. It's part of the reason why people are saying, what's the purpose and values of a brand?
Thank you, sir. And since you actually brought up the pandemic COVID-19, there's a question related to that. What are the major trends that is changing in the marketing landscape today? What or any difference has happened before and after the pandemic?
I would say that three big differences that have happened after the pandemic, and some of them will stay up and some will go back down a little bit, never back to where it was, is people are much more comfortable interacting electronically, and therefore it has basically helped everything, whether it is e-commerce or digital media, etc. That's number one. Number two is it has made companies rethink what a company is and employees rethink what work is. Because for 2 years, if you could work at home, and in most companies, the companies works just as well, there's a lot of things that people are also asking, what does my boss do? What am I doing? All of those kinds of things. Those have changed, and those are permanently changed. I think the third thing that's basically changed is structurally, the world has basically begun to recognize that we've had both benefits and challenges coming. It's like an earthquake that shook all companies, all countries. And as a result, there'll be new institutions and new laws that will come forth. But as far as marketing, it'll be more about brands as purpose, brands, values, brands, etc.
Thank you, Sam. Truly, yes, I don't want to call it a blessing in disguise, but it's amazing to see how post the pandemic, we all connected virtually. We are right now connected to you electronically. You're in a different time zone, and we are
Yes,
aware you have a very busy schedule. You have an odd time right now, but you were kind enough to join us here. So probably we are very comfortable doing this virtually now post the pandemic.
it is. And it's, this is the one key thing is, for me, it's 1 o'clock in the morning in
Yes.
Chicago, right? Uh, and the reality of it is, and I can be with you all, and often it's not like I just speak, I often listen to amazing people all over the world because of this. And so, the reality of it is, it's an and thing. It's not like I basically believe in-person interaction plus virtual is the future, right? And it's not necessarily the office plus something else is the future. It's in person, we'll often do things, and then virtual. And it's the reason why, my writing stage, because I read all over the world now every Sunday. I publish, on a Sunday morning. And that just gives you an idea of how powerful the world is going to basically be.
And that's exactly what we did this year at MMA Impact India 2022, where we went physical. Day one was all about being physical, and now today is digital. If
Absolutely.
yeah, if I may go ahead with a few more questions because we've
Sure, absolutely.
with the questions that we received from
Absolutely.
the audience. Yes, our next question is: what we have seen in the past is Indian market abuses the power of tech before it evolves completely. Which is why SMS is still a big hit in the US, but not anymore in India. Same with email marketing. What will you suggest to brands and product companies to tackle this scenario?
I think there are three kinds of things that happen. A is I always am a big believer in less is more. For some reason, people believe sending more messages, more interactions is better. Mine is fewer and higher quality interactions break through, right? So what I basically say is do a few things, but do them so amazing people will remember. And by its very nature, you'll stand out. That's one of those things. The second, to a great extent, is to recognize that when you compare things like share of market, share of spending, benchmarking against other competitors, that usually the most interesting things happening in your category are not from your category players, but come from outside your category players. I remind people in America, General Motors and Honda and BMW would look at each other, but the future of automotive came from Uber and Tesla, right? Gillette and Schick looked at each other, but the future of shaving came from Dollar Shave Club. So I always tell clients, benchmarking against other people just makes you less pathetic than other pathetic people. And now, because I'm both an unemployed, starving author and somewhat senior, I go to marketers and say, what are you talking about? I said, like in hours, I can change the way you think about things. You're wasting so much time and so much money because no one's telling you what the real world is. So what you all should do is, that's why I built this case about, internally in your companies, think about the exact opposite case. Just say, hey, look, if we were starting marketing all over again, what would a marketing plan look like? Why are we doing it like we're living in 1985?
Thank you, sir. And on that note, we'll now take one last question, once again by
Sure.
Mr. Dadwar. How many, the 25,000 visitors and the 500 CEOs on your list are engaging with you to ensure they're adopting your guidance, which may be a reflection of the willingness to change?
Well, here's what happens is, this thing at rishad.substack.com is 100% opt-in. So I don't send it to anybody. I've told you about it. If you want to go there, you can get it. But it's so The fact that 100% of the people who come to it have come to it by choice. On any given Sunday, approximately 60% of them open it, which is a very high open rate, right? And many people invite me to speak at their companies. So I'm assuming that there is some interaction. So there is interaction because I'm doing it by myself and I don't have the resources nor the time to manage communities. People write to me, but I don't have like community boards, but people write to me. And every week I add 500 new subscribers. So I'm assuming that there's some traction.
Thank you so much. And on that note, we still have some more questions. Probably if we have your permission, we might mail you the same and you can address
Absolutely.
them. Thank you. Once again, thank you so much, Rishad sir, for joining us here today
No,
at 1 a.m. in the morning. Thank you.
No. Thank you very much. I'm a huge fan of MMA. I'm also a huge fan of your new global president. His name is Lou Pascalis, who will come on next, who is a very important client of mine and a big friend of mine. So, I'm very glad to do this.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
He's actually with us. He's listening to us right now. Yeah. Thank you so much once again for taking your valuable time out and sharing your wisdom with us. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Thank you.